All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session, What I Wish I'd Learned in School. My name is Kaylee Esselborn. I am from Everfi, which I'll tell you a little bit more about here in a minute. But first, to get started, I know that you'll have access to these slides and information through the Virtually Different Conference website. But if you'd like to receive everything by email, as well as other links and information within the session, please feel free to scan the QR code here. You can pause the video to scan it if you'd like, or I'll put it up again here in a couple of minutes in the next couple of slides so that we can connect afterwards. I would love to hear from you, and I would love to connect with you more after the session. So if you haven't already, your bell ringer for today is to pause the screen where you are and go to everfi.com/new teacher to set up your Everfi account. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later. It is all free, just to put any worries to rest. Everything that I show you today is free. And so having that account set up will make it a little bit easier for you as we go through to be able to click around what I'm talking about. So if needed, go ahead and stop where you are right now, pause the recording if you need to, go to this website here on the screen and set up your account, and then come back when you're done and we will go on to the next slide. All right, so assuming that you've done that now and you're ready to get started, we're going to start here with just a little bit of an introduction, and we'll talk about these skills that we all need for life that sometimes we feel like got missed in our education, and then we'll explore some resources that can help address those. So again, my name is Kaylee Esselborn. I live in Indianapolis. I am the Director of Implementation for Indiana and Western Ohio. I've worked at Everfi for almost 6 years. So I've had the pleasure of connecting with a lot of educators throughout the state. I love working in Indiana with educators. They're just the most creative people, and it's really a pleasure. I started my career in education teaching ESL to adults. Then I moved to the middle school level here in Indy, teaching English to 7th and 8th graders. Then I worked at an elementary school here in Indy with parents and community partners. And like I said, now I've been at Everfi for almost 6 years. So happy to be with you today. And if you'd like to, if you're joining the session and want to add it into the chat, if there are other people joining at the same time as you, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. And this is where, if you scan the slide deck there, I'd love to connect with you afterwards. I'll send everything to you by email. So then if you have questions or want to chat through anything more afterwards, we can email together since we're not joining together in person today. So to give you a high-level overview of Everfi before we jump in, Everfi is an educational technology company. We create resources that address all of these skills that we know are super important for life beyond just academics. We do these through engaging online lessons that are student-led. There are also offline resources and supplemental materials. There are assessments built in, and you get that report right back to you immediately. And then you have local support. Like I said, I live here in Indy and support teachers in the area. And I'm always happy to connect with you. And like I said before, everything that we talk about today is totally free, thanks to partners that come on board ahead of time to pay for them for you, so that there's no cost for you or the school or the district or students or anything. So jumping into these skills that we all know we need for life, I'd like you to take a second. And again, if you're joining during the session allotment and you can chat in, feel free to, or if you are joining on your own, feel free to just jot down in your notes, what are the skills that you use on a daily basis that you've developed as an adult? So think things like monitoring your bank account, or how to cook a meal, or how to resolve a conflict between your children or with your spouse. So some of those skills that you have developed as an adult that you use on a daily basis. So go ahead and take a minute. You can pause the recording if you're watching, or like I said, if you are joining in real time and you'd like to chat in some answers, feel free to. So whatever your list may be, maybe, like I said, it's something related to money, or maybe it's like how to change a tire, or maybe it's how to manage all of the stressful things that go on in your life. If we know these skills that students really need, we all know them, right? What keeps us from focusing on them in school? Same as before, if you'd like to chat them in, if you're joining the session during the conference days, you can chat it in or make some notes in your on your own notes of obstacles or barriers that you see that keep you from helping students develop those skills that you jotted down before. Any kind of obstacle that you may foresee. Maybe it's a lack of time within your curriculum or within your school day. Maybe it doesn't fit with your curriculum. Maybe it's a lack of buy-in from your administration. Maybe it's just the difficulty of focusing on these things with kids. Maybe it's because it's kind of like a touchy subject and you're not sure how to approach it, or maybe there are laws against it. Sometimes things get written into legislation that we don't always agree with, or we don't feel like really manifest what's most important, whatever it may be. Maybe it's that you don't feel equipped to teach that topic because it's not your subject area. Anything that may keep you from focusing on that. Now, whatever you put is very valid. Some of the most common ones that we see, EverFi is designed to help resolve some of those issues. So for example, the first one that many people suggest that they just don't have time, right? We don't have time to go through all these things with kids, especially when you're trying to cover topics that are tested every year, But the nice thing about EverFi is that there's little prep time required. You really don't have to do much after you set things up. They're self-paced, which saves student progress, so you can really use them in small chunks whenever you do have some time. And then there is support for cross-curricular connections. So even if it's not a topic that you typically teach, you can provide it, or you can show it in a way that ties in with what you're talking about. One example is financial literacy. Maybe you teach health. It doesn't really make sense to teach financial literacy in health, or does it? Because how much do our finances affect our health, right? Whether it be our access to healthcare or just the stress that can come from money. So there are resources to help support you in making some of those connections. Maybe other subjects take priority. Maybe the tested subjects take priority. These are supplemental, they're independent learning. You can work them in really easily to the time that you have. And like I said, it can help you kind of make those connections to real world learning. If you're having trouble getting support from your buy-in, they're free, which helps, right? There's also support. So we're there to help you with professional development. All of that is free as well. There is data that comes so you can show the efficacy of what you're doing with your students. And then if it's an issue with your foundational understanding, like if you don't feel like you really know how to approach this with students because it's not maybe your expertise, there's built-in support for it. And then they're created. There's really not a lot that you have to do. And so it's a way that you can make it available for your students without necessarily having to be an expert yourself. In this area, we see these used a lot in class-like advisory, especially at the middle and high school level, because teachers don't have to prepare them and they don't have to be experts, but it's a way to get this content out to all kids because we know it really is so important. So like I said before, the EverFi resources that are created are designed to be done or designed to address some of these issues that are so common in our world today, whether it's money issues, mental health, social problems, all of these things we know are so important, but often get missed. And so these activities are designed to help support those issues. So we're going to go through a few of them together, things that I wish I had more knowledge about before I graduated. And the thing about a lot of these is that you probably did. Like we hear that a lot, right? Like people say, why didn't I learn about this in school? Well, the truth is that you probably did, at least to some extent, right? But maybe you only learned it once. And it takes a lot more than one exposure to really internalize something, right? And that's the case for me. When it comes to financial skills, I took a personal finance class in high school. It was a semester long, but that's it. It was one semester, I think my senior year, maybe my junior year. And so I remembered a couple of things, but it's not something that I had really internalized long-term. And so this is an example of one thing that is great to do over the entire K-12 experience so that students can really internalize it. So looking at things like budgeting or taxes, student loans, credit, insurance, et cetera. The EverFi resources that we have are most fleshed out for this topic. So if you are looking for resources to help support your students' financial education, we got you covered. There's stuff all the way from 4th grade to 12th grade covering a variety of topics. Like I said, ranging from things like taxes to budgeting to loans and credit to insurance and how to manage your money online. So lots of different activities here to help address those. And just so you know, the symbols that you see there, blue means that it is available in Spanish. Purple means it's also available in French. And then the green one means that it's evidence-based. All of our stuff is research informed, but those two have had studies aligned to them to show their efficacy. So I want to give you a feel for what one of these looks like. The first one we're going to take a look at is the EverFi Financial Literacy for High School. This is our foundational high school course that is the most comprehensive and the most basic for any financial topic. So when students log in, they'll see the lesson options there at the bottom. The one I'm going to show you today is the budgeting lesson because budgeting is my favorite. I love budgeting. So they'll click on that, and then each of these lessons starts with what we call sometimes like a little BuzzFeed quiz, right? It's helping them find out what their budgeting philosophy is. So they answer different questions about how they interact with money or how they feel about it. It gives them a personality, their budgeting personality, and then it helps them make it personal. So why would they want to create a budget? Sometimes we think about these things as like adult skills, right? But why would you personally want to create a budget even in high school? So they get to order their reasons there to make it personal for them, and then they dive right in. The first step is figuring out how much money you have to work with. So they pull the amount from each of their paychecks, and they go through analyzing their needs and their wants. This one actually takes them from needs to recurring expenses to wants. So their needs are super basic, things like food and shelter. And then the recurring expenses would be things that are technically wants, but that you have already committed to, things like a cell phone that you have to pay because you already committed to it. And then the wants would be all the extra things. So they have to, each time they go through and pick which ones are needs, which ones are wants, et cetera, and what they're going to spend their money on. And then they learn about different kinds of budgeting tools, highlighting that there's no right or wrong way to budget. Everyone, depending on your personality, you're going to find success with different kinds of tools. And then it simulates a month of spending, and then they analyze at the end of the month, how did you do? And how might you need to make adjustments for the next month? There are some tips for how they can do that. And then it provides them with a real world situation. You have an emergency, you broke your phone. So what do you do now? It provides them 3 options for how they can come up with the money to buy a new one. And depending on what they chose in their budget, some of these may or may not work. For example, if they did not put any money in savings, then they're not going to be able to choose that option. If skip your wants for a month, if they didn't have many wants, if they didn't spend much in that, then they're not going to have very much money there. So depending on what they chose in their budget, they'll be able to come up with something, and then they'll be able to choose a phone, and it probably isn't going to be as nice as the one they had before, right? Because they are just trying to come up with what they are able to get their hands on. And then the activity closes with a game where they are presented with different scenarios, and they can decide if they're going to spend money on those or not, all with the goal of managing those 3 categories at the top. They want to have some savings. They need to have some cash in their wallet, but they also want to have good emotional and relational health. They want to be able to have fun with their friends. They want to be able to build relationships and feel good about their life without having to spend all their money. So it's not that we want them to be hermits and they don't ever do anything, right? We want them to be able to enjoy things, but in a way that's responsible across all those categories. And then each of the activities ends with a post assessment. I didn't show you in the beginning, but there are also pre-assessments. So from the teacher perspective, you can see from beginning to end, how did they do and how did their knowledge change? All right, so that's the financial section. The second skill that I want to focus on today are mental and emotional skills. So things like self-regulation, coping strategies, recognizing when help is needed and how to get that help, or offering it to someone else, and that it's okay to get help if you are struggling. We want to remove that stigma as much as possible. So there are several different activities here, and they will be linked in, and I can send this to you afterwards, a list of all of the courses and which ones align to different skills. But starting as early as 1st or 2nd grade, we've got some lessons here, things like compassion and empathy, as well as growth mindset, and then all the way up to high school, dealing with stresses and safe and healthy ways, as well as managing mental wellness, etc. So the one I'm going to show you for this one is Understanding Mental Wellness. This is our middle to high school course that's focused on, just like it sounds, mental wellness. There are 6 activities altogether. When students log in, they'll choose the one that they're starting with. And then the one I'm showing you is the module 5, seeking and offering support. So when is help needed? So they're starting with a very high level, like when might this be an issue? And then what might be the barriers? So why would somebody not receive help, or why would you not want to offer help? Maybe you feel uncertain about offering help to someone that's struggling. It'll go through signs that you can keep an eye out for, and then they actually have to apply that to different situations. So which of these signs actually could be a signal that someone is struggling, and what is just normal behavior. And then it goes through stigma, like I mentioned. So what is stigma, and what types of it, how do we remove that? How do you identify it? And then also, how can you reduce it? So when somebody mentions something that is related to this, how can you reduce that stigma to make them feel more comfortable seeking help? And this, of course, they can apply to themselves too, right? If they're struggling with that, how do they ask for help if they feel uncomfortable? And then it goes very specifically into suicide and prevention. So helping students recognize warning signs, and then going through the 3-step VAR method of validate, appreciate, and refer. So how to step in if they notice someone is really struggling, and how to help a friend to prevent them from hurting themselves. And then they go through some of these talk tracks of helping students understand which part of the process this is, and what kind of language they can use if they're in that situation. And then the kinds of treatment that are available if they are struggling, or a friend is struggling, what might they be struggling with, and what are some appropriate interventions if they need them. And then they get to, again, apply it to themselves. What are some of these things that they want to try, or that they want to put into practice to help them feel more confident? And at the end, like I said before, there's a knowledge check, the quiz, to see what they learned and how they progressed. So that's our mental wellness one. Like I said, there are other ones related to social skills, compassion, etc. But this is just giving you a feel for what some of them are. So the third one is people skills. So things like communication, conflict resolution, civil discourse, how to get along with people who are different from you, empathy, etc. So we have lots of resources for these as well, starting as early as elementary school up to high school, looking at things from the social skill side of things, as well as how to build their own social skills in presenting themselves well in that college and career readiness course. So the one I'm going to show you for this one is our elementary school course, which is the Compassion Project Lower Elementary. There are 2 versions of this: the lower elementary for 2nd, 4th grade, and then the upper elementary 4th to 6th grade. I do see some teachers use this even with 1st graders. It's just a little bit harder if they can't read yet. So that's why it's recommended with 2nd grade. But if you have some 1st graders that can read, or if you want to do it together and help them through it, you can do that as well. So this is the Compassion Project. There are 3 activities that they can access when they sign in. And just so you know, these are the online activities. There are actually like 15 offline lessons for the Compassion Project as well. So this one has a really robust offline offering. So for the online piece, there are the 3 activities. I'm going to show you the Compassion Playground, which is the first one. Again, it starts with a pre-quiz to help them see what they already know. And then each of these starts with a video where it introduces them to the characters and what they're going through, and the scenarios that lead into this topic. And then after the video, they go through some reflection questions to help make sure that they really understand what happened in the video. These 3 different characters, what happened, who stepped in, and they have to choose each character for the different questions. And then it goes into the informational piece, the instructional piece of what is compassion. They go through the definition of what compassion is: see someone in need, care about their feelings, do something to show you care. And then they practice going through some different applications of that. This is what it might sound like. And then they're going to go through 3 different scenarios to practice where compassion might be needed and how each person can show that. So I'm going to show you just the first one, which is the one at the top. But as I mentioned, the students would go through each of these individual scenarios, but I'm just going to show you one. So the first one there at the top is the 3 kids. Their scenario is that they're playing kickball, and the girl in the middle has the ball. It's actually the boy on the right, David. It's his turn to kick. But Sarita, who's on the left, they are losing. And Sarita doesn't want to lose, and David is not a great kicker. And so she suggests that Alex, who's in the middle, take David's turn to kick. So then they go through these, each person's feelings, why they might have been motivated, what might motivate them in that scenario, why they would do that. So how Alex may be feeling uncomfortable maybe in taking David's turn, but she also doesn't want to make Sarita mad. Sarita feels uncomfortable because they went through all these. I only showed you one, but Sarita feels bad because she keeps getting made fun of, that they keep losing. So she really doesn't want to lose. And that's why she suggests that Sarita or Alex does it. And then David feels a little embarrassed, right? Because she's suggesting that he's not very good. So they're looking at what's the foundational emotion here for everyone? How is each person feeling? And then they go through different scenarios, what's compassionate, what's not, going back to the definition, reviewing the definition there, and then the post quiz. I don't have a slide here that skipped it, but then they have to, they actually work through the resolution, right? Like, how can we show compassion to everyone in this scenario? And I think they end up with David taking his turn, and Sarita, they stick up for Sarita or something when she gets made fun of. I don't remember the exact resolution on this one, but each of them, they go through that, and then they get to choose what they think would be the best resolution. And then the post quiz at the end to see what they learned in the session. And like I mentioned before, that was just one of 3 scenarios. They would have gone through all 3 scenarios as they go through. All right, last section I want to show you are career readiness skills. So one thing that I always say that I wish that I had learned about more in school is not so much like, what do I want to do with my life, but what are some options in like just general fields or type of work that would work well for me. So that's what this is about. What's out there? How do you choose a career path? How your interests and skills transfer to different careers. So I'm not getting so locked in on this one job, but the things that you enjoy, what are all the possible careers out there that could pull that in, and then how to make a good impression, interview skills, etc. So again, lots of resources for this, starting in the intermediate grades, all the way up to high school. The one I'm going to show you is Character Playbook. So this one is building healthy relationships. This would work really well in that social and mental skill section as well. But I'm highlighting it here because a lot of these interpersonal skills relate really well to career readiness as well, right? So they're doing an activity about decision making. To the different parts of decision making, what makes it difficult, and then they are introduced to a scenario of a girl who goes to a carnival each year with a friend and his mom, but this year some other friends invited her, and so she's not really sure how to handle it. And then they help her go through each step of the decision making process. So starting first with identifying the problem, they help her decide what actually is the question here. What's the problem that needs to be solved? Number 2, list all the possible solutions. So they help her identify what are some things that she could do here. What are some ways that she could handle it? And then 3rd, reflect on her values. So we want to make sure that we can line her solution up with her values, and what would be the pros and cons of each. So they're going to pick a solution to review more closely, and then they're going to do a pros and cons list for whichever one they chose. And they can go back and do this multiple times if they want to choose different options. They can do that. So they're going through the pros and cons for that. And then they're going to look at her values and see, does it align with her values? For example, if she decides just to ignore her other friend, does that align well with her value of loyalty and friendship? Probably not. So they're going through helping her decide what are her values, and does the solution help address or align with her values. And then the 4th step is they make a decision to take action, and they get to choose what they want to do, and then they can see how it works out. And like I said before, they can go back and try other ones if they'd like to see how each different solution might play out afterwards. I love this part, especially for middle schoolers, the chance to see like how it would work out in a third party situation where they're not involved. And so their like social status and ego is not at risk, I think is really helpful for middle schoolers. And then the last one is reflect on their decisions. How did it go? Do they feel good about it? Would they make a different decision next time, etc.? And then again, at the end, it helps them kind of tie it into themselves more personally. How is their decision making going? And then they do the quiz at the end as well. So that's just an introduction to a few different activities. I'm going to give you a minute now. Again, you can pause the recording if needed. in the chat if you're joining in live time, or in your notes, which of the resources reviewed, either the 4 that we looked at or any of the ones on the list, how might they help meet your students' needs, and in what settings might you be able to use them? What creative moments could you pull those in to help reinforce some of these skills with your students? So I'll give you a quick minute to pause, and then when you're ready, click play and we'll go forward. All right, so once you've had a chance to think through that, I'm going to give you another minute, another pause. I want you to take a few minutes to look over your plans for the next year and make a note in your calendar of when you might want to use it. So maybe you liked this character playbook course and you want to use it during your unit, whatever, in October. Go to your calendar now and make a note in October to come back to that. Because if you're anything like me, when I was teaching, I would go to conferences, especially over the summer when you're not actively teaching. You're like, oh yeah, that looks really cool. I'm going to check that out. And then, you get busy with other things and you forget about it. So take a minute now and at least just make yourself a reminder. You can start, making notes in your planning guide or in your resource, your pacing guide or whatever, if you have it already. Or if nothing else, you can just make a reminder in your phone at that time to go back and check on this at the time that you think you might be able to use it. And again, if you're joining in live time and there are other people watching at the same time and you want to add in your notes in the chat or in the discussion boards, feel free to. I know that it's helpful sometimes to see what other teachers are thinking and be like, oh yeah, that is a good idea. I hadn't thought of that before. So add in your thoughts there if you'd like to. But go ahead and take a pause. And then when you're ready, click start and or click play and we'll go to the next section. All right, so if you've got some ideas now of how you might want to use it, we're going to dive in together of how to actually do that. So if you didn't already in the beginning, you're going to create an EverFi account, or if you already have one, you can go ahead and log in. The website's there on the screen. If your district is integrated with us through Clever, then you can just log in with Clever. You don't even have to create the account. You already have one. Technically, your district has shared your info with us, so you can log in with Clever that way. Or ClassLink, we also have that option. If you do use Clever and you are not integrated, like if you click on login with Clever and it's not an option for you, it could be that your district hasn't shared anything with us yet. But if you would like to be, feel free to reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end. I would be happy to work with your district people to get that set up for you this summer so that by the time you come back for school, you can use Clever. It's a lot easier, of course, to get students logged in that way because they can just log in with their school credentials. So once you've created or chosen that, then you'll choose the topic, your grade level, etc. And then when you get here, it's going to default to my courses based on the grade level and subject area. It's going to add some courses for you. But you can access any of our courses by clicking Explore Courses. It's the tab there on the left. You can see everything that we have is organized by topic. So you can scroll there to find the ones that work best for you. And as you're doing so, you can explore the courses more by clicking the details button. I know that arrow is pointing to add to class, but if you click on the details button next to that, it's going to take you to the screen that looks like this. For each course, you'll see there is a preview course option. That will take you in and show you a student demo. So if you want to see what that course looks like for students, you can kind of click through there, play around with it for a little bit. It's helpful to see what that experience is like for students, but I don't recommend spending a whole lot of time on that because it usually takes a little while to get through. If you scroll down into the planning resources section, you'll see that there's a curriculum guide and a course outline typically that will outline for you what is covered in the online lesson. So use the preview course to see what it looks like, get a feel for it, click around for a few minutes, but then really use that curriculum guide to help you plan because it's going to lay everything out for you in a document of what modules there are, what they cover, how long they take, objectives, etc. You'll also find in this section, there are lesson plans, activities, assessment keys, other kinds of resources that you can use if you'd like to. So definitely check those out to decide if you'd like to use. All of those are optional. You can just do the online lessons as they are, have students just go through those. But if you wanted to build it out more to make it more blended where they're doing that individually, and then you do an offline lesson together or something, there are resources for that. Like I said, you can use it however you want. You can pull out individual questions and just put them in your Google Classroom or whatever it is. You can do the entire lesson plan as it's created. It's whatever works best for you. to make it the best scenario for your classroom. All right, so now once you have decided which courses you want to use to share these with students, you're going to create a class. And you can do this from almost any of the tabs. You're going to click the Add to Class button. And then it's going to prompt you to either add to an existing class. If you already had a class created, you could add a course to a class you already have, or you can create a new class. If you do choose existing class, you're going to click there and then it will show you the classes you've already created, and you can add it easily to one of those if needed. But if you are creating a class for the first time, then you're going to fill out that information that you see there, the class name. You can name it whatever you want. You can create as many classes as you want. So if you have multiple sections throughout the day, you can create a class for each section. If you are using Clever or ClassLink, where it says class name there at the top, if you click on that, it'll actually give you a drop down of your rostered sections. Just a heads up, over the summer, many districts, clear all that out. So you might not see any rostered sections yet. But once they have it set up at the beginning of the school year, then you could choose a section that you want. And then at the bottom, you can add courses to the class. You can add as many as you'd like. You can just click that checkbox and then add them all at once. Or you can always come back and edit a class later to add courses when you're ready for them. It's up to you, whichever works best for you. And once you've done that, then you'll click Create Account. And it's going to give you a few options for getting kids logged in. The first one is sharing the registration code. This works pretty well with high schoolers, especially middle schoolers as well. They go to the website and they plug your code in there. Many teachers will put it in their Schoology or Google Classroom or whatever with the link and then the code. So kids just click on the link and then copy and paste the code in, and then they choose a username and a password. So that's option one. Option two is creating their accounts for them, and you have the option to do one at a time, or you can create multiple accounts. This works especially well for young kids, or if you have older kids that struggle with, setting accounts up themselves, you can just upload. There's a template you can use and then upload with the usernames and passwords to do that step for them. The third option, which we mentioned already, is single sign-on via ClassLink or Clever. So those are the two options that we have currently. And in that case, the students wouldn't have to have an extra class or an extra account at all. You would just choose your sections that are rostered to you. And then when they log in through Clever and click the EverFi app, they're going to automatically see what you've assigned to their class. So that's the easiest option if you have it available to you. Or like I said, if your district uses Clever and EverFi is not on there yet, just get in touch with me and I'm happy to help your district get that set up this summer. Okay, so once you've created the classes, then you can find them under the My Classes tab. You'll see what's assigned to them, how many have started, etc. Using Clever, your students. This is where you can also edit a class if you need to add a new course to it, or get that registration code if you need it. Just for your information, this is what the student dashboard looks like. They can add codes to an account they already have. So if they're using with another teacher, they can just sign into their other account and then add your code there in the corner. You can also, under the students tab, see their login info, so you can see what their login is, and then you can reset passwords for them if you need to, all from that students tab. And then the gradebook is where you're going to see their quiz score. So as they go through, you'll see, you can sort by the course and then also sort by your class, and you can see their scores for each of the quizzes that they've taken. It'll also show you their progress throughout the module. So like if it'll show you on what screen of how many, so like screen 30 of 60. So you can see how far along they are in the lesson. The details button there on the left will show you the pre-quiz score. So if you want to see that, you can click there and it'll show you all their pre-quiz scores as well as all their post-quiz scores. The last thing I'll mention, well, not the last thing, but one of the last things I'll show you on your dashboard is that Invite a Teacher button. If you click that, then you can fill out the info. If you have a teacher friend at your school or another school or in a different department that you want to share this with, you can fill that info out and send them an email from us, and it'll say something like, Kaylee thinks you should try EverFi. In order for you to get credit for referring them, they have to use that link in the email because that's how it gets tracked to you. So I highly recommend telling them to look for that email from us because it's really easy to ignore if they don't know what it is. And they do have to use that link for it to credit to you. But if they use your link to register and then they end up using an EverFi course with students, you'll get credit for referring them and a $15 Amazon gift card for each one. So feel free to share with your friends. They don't have to use the same course as you. They don't have to be at your same school even. So just share that and then tell them to look for the email from us. Okay, now the last thing on your dashboard is the support tab at the top. This is where you can find your local support person. For now, it's me. That might change in the future. So you can click where it says support and then find their email address. There's also the contact us button at the bottom is the chat. So you can get real-time support from our staff as well there by clicking the chat. If you can't remember how to do something or need help with something, feel free to join that or to access that. That technical support center there at the top also has articles like how-to articles that you can read through if you prefer to do that. All right, so now that we've gone through how to access a couple of best practices moving forward, some ideas for how to implement them if you haven't already thought of them. You can do them as extension activities or enrichment activities for students maybe who finish early as independent work if they get done early, or if they, have a sub or something. They're really easy for subs to manage because they just get logged in and work on them on their own. If you don't have a lot of time, you can do like a divide and conquer where the students do one of the lessons, other students do a different lesson, and then they share with each other what they learned. If your class does centers or stations, they're for that as well. So lots of different ways you can work these in. And again, like I mentioned, if you have other ideas and want to add them into the discussion, please feel free to share ideas of how these might work in your class. I mentioned before, if you do advisory at your school, these are really great for advisory because they are already made. The teachers don't have to create them. The teachers don't have to be experts in the content and their playlist, but there are a lot of configurations you could do, whatever works for you. If you are interested in building out an advisory playlist for your school, if you're interested in using these for advisory, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share what other districts have done or make some recommendations based on the topics that you're trying to hit in advisory, and help you get everything set up so that it goes really smoothly. All right, moving forward, a few tips for you. We have a YouTube channel that has lots of videos there, both things like how do I make a class again, as well as like content and ideas from other educators that share their ideas, even not related to EverFi, but cover in our and then we also do professional development. That's free. So if your district, or if you're working with your district and building out some professional development, whether at the beginning of the school year or during the school year, please reach out to us. We have built out sessions already. Like I can do one like that's really focused on EverFi, but then we also do sessions that cater to whatever it is your district needs. And then of course, we're on all the social media channels. So join us there, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you are. A lot of times, especially on like Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, they'll share like giveaways. They usually do giveaways in the spring and in the winter for teachers that use EverFi. They'll share ideas or strategies. So lots of fun things going on there to follow us to get some ideas. All right, so some next steps for you. If you have time now, you can take it, or if you want to come back to it later in the summer, explore the courses using that view course feature, the preview course, explore the curriculum guides, course outlines, see if you want to use those lesson plans or discussion guides, and then make notes for how you want to implement it so that once the school year starts and you're busy, you remember to actually come back to these things that you wanted to use. Thanks so much for joining me. Like I mentioned, you can scan that QR code there to enter your info, and I will send all this to you as well as a couple of other handouts that can be helpful for you. And I would love to connect with you one-on-one if you have further questions. If you're planning PDs or want help brainstorming brainstorming advisory ideas, whatever it may be, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to connect with you to talk more one-on-one. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and thank you for being a teacher or counselor or whatever it is your role is. Thank you for working with students. You are so needed and so valued. Have a wonderful summer.